Today I'm going to be doing a watercolour painting from some information that I collected when I was out a week or so ago, painting up north here in New Zealand. When I'm out, I do quite a few value sketches to just feel my way into the landscape and to get the idea of where the big shapes are and what the values are going to be. When I've done this sort of a thing, I'll move on to a watercolour painting. Just a quick sketch, just looking out across the landscape, sitting by the side of the road. I did film this, but unfortunately my camera was completely set on all the wrong settings and it blew out the whites of the paper. You couldn't see a thing. Total disaster. But anyway, look, I got the picture done. So I've brought it home, back into the studio, and we're going to make a painting from it. This was actually the picture I was going to use. Same days, same trip. Again, my camera was completely set on I don't know what, and it blew everything out. But it doesn't matter because I've been there, I've done the painting, I've done the drawing, and I'm just going to use this as a guide for the general outline, bit of distant hill and the water. Now the horizon is set about halfway, which is a bit of a no-no. So when I do the sketch, I'm going to have to make the decision where to put the horizon in. Do I want to put the foreground in? Do I want to move the whole thing up? Do I want to make up something in the sky? I like this sort of sweep, and I like this flat through here, and I like going back to here. So I don't want too much information here. I could even leave it out. This is all really the design, and a lot of effort goes into the design, because once I know what the design is, then I've got a roadmap and off I go. So that'll be the next thing, sitting down and working out the design. So in order to do the drawing, I looked at the sketchbook that I'd taken, and this was done from a slightly different place from where I took the photograph, but it was a little bit more detailed, and it's given me a little bit more information. So looking at that, I made two little drawings. Remember, I was talking about whether I wanted to lift the horizon. That's actually the center of the picture, that line there, and that's the center of the picture, so the bullseye's there. So the horizon was in the photo just slightly above this center line. So this is what I did here, just a quick sketch, and then I actually made the sky slightly smaller, raised it all up, and took away the foreground. But visually, design-wise, it's pretty boring now. I actually like this oblique angle because I think it helps you step back into space. Your eye is running along here, it's going along the surf line, it's going into this shape, it's having a look there, and then it's having a look there, up into the sky, and off it goes round again. Whereas this one, you're sort of, well, a bit bird's eye really. You're not actually standing on the edge, as it were, as you were here. You've got the feeling you're rooted in the ground, looking across. So you've narrowed the distance between yourself and there, whereas here you've got that feeling of space running across the water. So that's what I decided to do. So I've drawn in the foreground, I've put it through this will be the water, and there's the headland and the sky. Now I don't know if I'll do the sun here and the light rays coming down as I had in the sketch, or whether I'll just leave that sort of fairly blank and it's going to be about the land and this piece here. But we'll see when we get going. I haven't got a plan for that yet, it'll just emerge as I'm painting. So my next step is to paint. So I've mixed up a couple of blue washes. One was an ultramarine blue, which is slightly warmer, and one is a sort of a cerulean blue with a bit of cobalt turquoise in it, and that's slightly cooler. I've also got a bit of raw umber violet in the ultramarine wash on the left. I've put a tiny bit of cobalt teal blue into the one on the right, and as I say, cerulean blue. So I'm going to lay in the water. Now you'll see as I progress with this that there are some white lines showing through, and what I didn't say is when I did the sketch I was using a wax pencil. So I drew on the page where I wanted the water, the sort of surfy, watery, foamy stuff to be, so that I didn't have to worry about preserving the highlights. The highlights are already there because I've wax crayoned them. So on the right here I'm laying in some of the greenier wash, and on the left and up to the horizon I laid the ultramarine blue. And I'm just washing it in, mopping it in. I'm not worrying too much. I'm letting it settle where it wants to settle. So just a much lighter value for the sky. You've got to think about your lights and your darks, but the sky is the lightest part of this picture, really. And I didn't want too much information in the sky because it was really about the headland. So there I'm using a bit of raw umber violet and ultramarine blue and making a slightly darker, juicier wash. And into the headland. I'm using a 3/4 inch black velvet oval, and it's got a lovely point on it, and I was just using the tip and the point to draw down the headland there, but then it carries enough water in it so I can sort of mop in, keep going. I don't have to keep re-wetting it. And you can see I've changed the value. The darkest value will be in that front piece of the headland, and then I'm just laying in a sort of an underwash. I'm getting a bit of sap green. And again, I'm using a bit of raw umber violet, which is just my most favourite colour this week. Well, it probably will be for a while. It is a mixture. It's a Daniel Smith paint. And it's basically raw umber with violet in it. I could do it myself, but oh, out of a tube. How easy is that? So I've put in the sap green for the little bit of greenery at the beach head. And back into the sky. The sky's sort of dried a little bit now, so I could go back in with a slightly heavier wash, just to denote a bit of... It was fairly overcast when I was there, and yeah, I didn't want to heighten the colours too much. I think the colours that I'm using give you the emotion of the day and the place, and I sort of like to be true to that. So now I've picked up a Da Vinci brush, which is a travel brush, and made a much heavier, juicier wash of the green. And I'm using a Hooker's Green Dark, which is in the little palette on the right, mixed with a violet. And I was being quite careful with it, sort of letting it be a bit juicy and wet. And I wanted to sort of charge the colour in, which is sort of drop colour in and let it do its thing. and settle where it wanted to. So I was using a bit of raw sienna, burnt sienna, trying not to sort of over blend it. And it was quite a dark, as I say, juicy. So that means there's less water in it, more pigment, less water. The more water you put in a colour, the thinner and the less pronounced it is. It becomes more of a wash. More water is a lighter value, is really what I'm trying to say. So there was some burnt sienna running down the back of that little headland. And it mixes quite nice with sap green because they almost tend to separate a little bit, which I quite liked. So now I'm going in and just touching a few edges. There's quite a lot of negative space in this picture, which is really where the ocean is and the sky. So the positive sort of area is the headland and the beach and what will be the foreground, which I'm laying in now. And I've sort of almost got a bit of a yin-yang thing going on with that, which I think is rather nice. So it feels fairly balanced to me. And it's all about drawing your eye to the sort of majestic headland that we have going on here. So the value of the foreground is darker, and you step over the threshold into the painting. And I've jumped on a bit. I did quite a bit of work on that foreground. I was putting in some leaves and flax. We have a lot of flax here in New Zealand, and I probably got a little bit too carried away and put in a bit too much detail. But anyway, then I'm going back into the headland. I had speeded up this part of the filming, so I'm going back. This is sort of about number 3 in my layers, and it's all dry underneath now, so it's sort of wet on dry, and so there's not too much shifting and bleeding going on. So I'm putting in the rocks, which are the darkest, really the darkest part of the painting. And the angle and the way I'm putting the brush down like that is to denote that they're rocks that I'm talking about, slightly linear, graphic-y look. It's not a soft wash, it's more deliberate. And I've changed to a tiny, it's an Isabey, I'm not quite sure what number it is, but it's an Isabey travel brush, and it's a sable, and it's got a beautiful, beautiful tip. And it does quite a bit of my fine work for me. Watercolor dries lighter than it is when you put it down. You think, oh, this is just really juicy and gorgeous and dark, and then it dries and it's always lighter and it always catches you out. So I've sort of gone back in and beefed up that darkness of the headland. But there's still modulation in there. There's still burnt sienna and raw umber violet. It's not just one sort of continuous blob of dark. So that's the sap green and ultramarine blue for a bit of definition in the trees on the beach in the foreground there, or the middle ground really. So it's all fairly muted. Muted ocean, muted greens and browns, but it's reflecting this sort of the moodiness of the day and the sort of strength and presence of the headland as well. It's quite an interesting place. It's right at the top of New Zealand. It's near Cape Reinga, and it's quite a wild, rugged place. Hardly anybody lives up there. You have to drive about 5 hours from where I live to even see it. I put some jaune brilliant down on the beach, and then that was just tissue to lift it off again. But anyway, it certainly has a presence, this area. And right at the top of New Zealand, it's where the spirit, when you pass away, it's where the spirit leaves New Zealand from. So it's a sort of a poignant place as well. So I'm coming to the end now, and I wanted to put the headland, the far distant headland, so I don't want it just a long cigar-like blob, so I lifted a bit of colour off. So that was the painting, and I hope you've enjoyed that and learnt something from it, and you can take these techniques and ideas and use them in your own paintings. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.